Earlier today, Commanders head coach Dan Quinn and GM Adam Peters took the podium in Indianapolis at the NFL Scouting Combine to break down their vision for the Washington Commanders heading into a pivotal 2026 offseason. And today, I'll be sharing my takeaways from what they had to say. They said a lot, and a lot of nuggets were dropped by these guys in terms of what they're going to be doing heading into the 2026 offseason for the Burgundy and Gold and what their plan is for this football team as they look to bounce back from a 5-win campaign. Now, all week here on the Commanders Report, make sure you guys catch all of our coverage from the 2026 Scouting Combine. We put out both Dan Quinn and Adam Peters' full pressers out on the channel earlier today from our team that's on the ground there at Indianapolis. And we're going to be getting you guys updates as to all the formal interviews that the Washington Commanders are having with prospects at the NFL Scouting Combine this year. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button to never miss a rumor, never miss a report from Indianapolis when it comes to the Washington Commanders this week. All right, so now let's get into our takeaways, starting with what is kind of driving the personnel decisions for the Washington Commanders this offseason. And according to what Adam Peters and Dan Quinn had to say today, it sounds like new offensive and defensive coordinators, David Blough and then Daron Jones, are going to be guiding the personnel acquisition aspect of this offseason, both in free agency and in the NFL draft. According to Dan Quinn, Blough and Durante are going to be, they've already laid out their vision to the front office and Adam Peters and his staff and what types of players they want to add to this roster that fit their new schemes that they are implementing here in Washington. So I would say keep an eye on players from their previous stops with Daron Jones, the Minnesota Vikings, and then, of course, David Blough, who played for Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions. If there's players that are available from those teams that played with David Blough or played under Daron Jones in Minnesota, I would say those guys would be prime candidates to be Washington Commanders this year in NFL free agency in particular. If you guys want to check out who Daron Jones in particular could bring over from the Minnesota Vikings, we put out a video on that very topic on this channel just last week. I'll put the link to that one in the top right of today's show as well as in the comments and description if you guys want to see some of those Vikings players that could become Commanders on defense this year. But then another takeaway that I had from the press conferences today is that the Washington Commanders could be considering trading down in round one of the 2026 NFL Draft. They are definitely going to be keeping their options open. This was one of the first questions posed to GM Adam Peters today. This is what he had to say.
Well, hopefully the same. But yeah, I mean, every time you approach everything the same and you want to really uncover every stone and do all the work on all the different possibilities, whether that's, you stay in pick, you trade back, do you trade up, and you want to be sure you have all your bases covered because you don't know what's going to happen on draft day. If a team, wants to trade up from 27, you have to be ready for that. Like, who's going to be there at 27? Is that worth it, or do you want to trade back, not as far, or all those things. So every process is very similar. We want to make sure you cover all your bases, know everybody in the draft, not just the guys that are in the top 7 or whatever, because you never know what's going to happen. So, but we're working really hard. Our college staff's been grinding since it's really August in the summer. So we have a great kind of setup right now, and we're just getting into that after we get into free agency, really digging into the draft. But those guys have been doing work all year, so we'll be ready to go.
I thought that was a really well thought out answer there by the GM of the Washington Commanders, and that didn't stop the talk when it came to what they're looking for in a potential draft prospect to draft in round one, as they talked about edge rusher and what they're going to be looking for in that edge rusher that they said in their opening offseason press conference this year that they're going to be hunting for this offseason. This is what Adam Peters says is important in terms of that edge rusher that they add this offseason, whether it be in free agency or via the draft.
Evaluating the edge, just guys that fit your scheme and your profile. And we have a new scheme this year with Durante, and so, but I think a lot of that stuff carries over. If you're a really good pass rusher, you're always gonna, pass rush is going to weigh more than run defense, especially the way this league is. But I mean, ideally you want Myles Garrett. That's who you want. But there's only one of those guys walking on the face of the earth. So, but a lot of those same traits, right? And long, fast, explosive, can turn the corner, can finish, all those things.
Now, obviously, Peters just laid out a bunch of different traits that could be important to their decision-making as to who they bring in at that position this offseason. However, one of those things that he mentioned, length, might not be as much of an important thing as you might think in their decision-making. Right after Peters said that, he said this.
In terms of guys with shorter arms, and there's a few in this draft that are really, really good players, it's, arm length is, I can go into days on this arm length thing, because every time you measure somebody's arm, it could be 30, 31, 32, 33, just depending on who measures it. So you get a pretty good idea of how long their arms are with that, but you really, how well they play with whatever length they have. Some guys have shorter arms that play with great length and extension all the time. Some guys have really long arms that don't use their length as well. So it's great to have that length, but it's also how they use it and how it comes out on the tape. And so some guys can excel with shorter arms by doing things differently, but, ideally you always want to have err on the side of a longer person, yeah.
Now, that description from Adam Peters certainly seems like it opens the door to a prospect like Rueben Bain Jr. out of Miami, somebody that's a very highly touted edge rusher in this year's NFL draft class that, his main thing that gets talked about is his lack of length. But I really think that Bain's film is terrific, and he is one of those guys that even though he does have those shorter arms, he uses the length that he does have to his advantage. He's got absolute dynamite for hands. His power is unbelievable. And when you look at the most effective pass rushers in the National Football League, it's the guys that can affect the pocket with their power, convert that speed to power, and I think Bain's a good run defender. All the things that the Commanders are looking for at the position, I do think Rueben Bain Jr. brings to the table. So I know that length is going to be something that gets discussed a lot with him in particular. But then when it comes to Dan Quinn, when he was asked about the edge rusher position in his press conference, he says first step explosiveness is what he's looking for in his edge rusher. This is Coach Q on the edge rusher position.
Yeah, it matters a lot because that ability to affect the QB, it's one of the biggest tenets in winning the game, for obviously scoring and that, but the ability to hit and pressure the quarterback, it also forces takeaways. Those are things. So you want to see somebody that has demonstrated speed and initial quickness to beat somebody on the field. And I think that can be one thing as we get into this week and you hear timings and that, hey man, let's go back to that demonstrated speed on the field and playmaking ability. And so that at the top is what I see. But beating somebody to the punch, having an explosive, get off to make someone feel overwhelmed, that's what all of the great rushers have.
Now, that description sounds a lot to me like David Bailey out of Texas Tech, where, he's known for that incredible first step quickness to, as Dan Quinn put it, kind of put the onus on the offensive tackle to kind of make them feel overwhelmed at the point of attack. And I definitely think David Bailey, as kind of an undersized outside linebacker type, would actually fit really, really well in that quote-unquote Andrew Van Ginkel role inside this Brian Flores-esque defensive scheme that Daronte Jones is going to be bringing here to the Washington Commanders. So based on the two top edge rushers that we talked about today, I think Arvell Reese is probably going to be off the board by the time we get to pick 7, but I think there's a world where both Rueben Bain Jr. and David Bailey are both available at pick number 7. Between these two, which one would you prefer? Let me know down there in the comment section. Type RB for Rueben Bain, type DB for David Bailey. This will be the pinned comment on today's show. In just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today at Harry's. While I tell you about our sponsor today, let me know which edge rusher you would like to pick at number 7. And with that, let's have a word from our sponsor today at Harry's. And life is all about continual improvement, guys. And that includes the quality of the products that we use every single day. Your phone is practically a supercomputer in your pocket. Cars can even drive themselves now. Your headphones cancel outside noise like magic. But your razor, it's likely still a flimsy, overpriced, and it's still probably stuck back in 2008. That's where our friends at Harry's Plus come in. Harry's Plus is an advanced pivoting system to reach every corner of your face, refined blade tech for a closer, smoother shave, and a weighted metal handle, which is Harry's heaviest handle ever for added control and comfort. It feels like an expensive shave without having to break the bank. With Harry's Plus, each blade is honed at 3 different angles to cut hair cleanly at the root without tugging. Blade spacing is optimized to glide smoothly and avoid clogging. Every cartridge includes a lubricating strip with aloe and vitamin E to calm skin while you shave. But maybe the best part about Harry's Plus is how affordable affordable it is. Harry's owns their own world-class blade factory in Germany, which means no outsourcing and no middlemen. And because they control the entire process from steel to shelf, they keep costs low and pass the savings on to you. And if you don't love your shave with Harry's Plus, Harry's is going to make it right with you, no questions asked. The risk-free trial means there's zero downside to giving them a shot. And I just wanted to show you guys that I actually use this product, and I love this product. I've been using it since college. As a broke kind of college kid, I didn't really have the money to spend money on the premium products that are way too expensive, not to mention their refills are super expensive. But I didn't want to get caught with the bargain brand stuff that, you can only use the blades once. They're super dull. They irritate and even cut your skin. But with Harry's Plus, man, you get that weighted metal handle. It gives you that premium feel. You get that barbershop quality shave every single time without having to break the bank. I cannot recommend this product enough to you guys. So for a limited time only, our listeners can get the Harry's Plus trial set for only $10 at harrys.com/chat. This set includes the all-new Harry's Plus razor, one refined 5-blade cartridge, a 2-ounce foaming shave gel, and a travel cover to protect your blades on the go. Just head on over to harrys.com/chat to claim this offer, and after you purchase, they'll ask where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them that we sent you. And a big thank you to Harry's for sponsoring today's edition of the Commanders Report. So according to Adam Peters, there is, quote-unquote, no final decision on Marshon Lattimore and whether or not he will be cut to save this team $18.5 million in cap space for the 2026 season. This is what AP had to say about Lattimore's situation.
No, we haven't made it a final decision there. There's a lot of things that go into that, and we'll still have a few more conversations, Ben. But until then, he's still on our team.
Come on, man. Like, what are we talking about here with Marshon Lattimore? We haven't made a decision yet. Like, we all know Marshon Lattimore's time here in Washington is over, or at least it should be. And if they are actually still thinking about this, I have to wonder whether or not Adam Peters and Dan Quinn are qualified to still be running this football team. Because what are we going to do here? Like, we're gonna pay a bad cornerback that's way past his prime $18.5 million against the cap next year to be, a liability on defense like he was last year. I thought what Adam Peters said in the introductory offseason press conference this year, that we want to get younger and faster. If that's true, we have to let go of Marshon Lattimore. You have zero dead cap if you let him go. You save $18.5 million and you get a bad player off your roster. This is an absolute no-brainer decision. If I'm being honest with you guys, it should have already happened at this point, and they got to make it happen before the start of the new league year, if you ask me. But then we get to Laramie Tunsil here, where Adam Peters provided an update on extension talks between the Commanders and their stud left tackle. Sounds like talks are going pretty decent right now between the Commanders and Laramie Tunsil. This is what AP had to say about trying to get this deal done as soon as possible.
I don't want to put a timeline on it, JP, but it is really important for us, and we've been having talks, and we've been having good and productive talks with Laramie and his team, and we're as motivated as ever to get that done, but I don't want to put a timeline on it. Obviously, I don't think either side wants to drag it on, but I don't think the league year is anything that's going to be a deadline of sorts.
Adam, I'm begging you, just get this done and get it done as fast as you possibly can. Now, I'm sure Tunsil and his representation are asking for quite a bit at this point, but I think we learned our lesson last year that, extending these contract negotiations into training camp is a bad idea, all right? They should learn that lesson from the Terry McLaurin debacle last preseason and training camp, and they should try to get this done as soon as possible, because the reality of the situation is, guys, the longer the Washington Commanders wait to make this happen, the more they're going to have to pay. Trent Williams, maybe the other, great left tackle of his generation, along with Laramie Tunsil, is slated to become a free agent. The 49ers announced today that they're likely to release him, and he's going to be a free agent this year, and he's going to get a lot of money somewhere. Okay, you got to get it done before Trent Williams goes somewhere and resets the tackle market, because guess what? Laramie Tunsil's going to want to reset the market as well, and the Commanders are going to have to pay that extra dime if they wait to, be second fiddle in this race to pay their left tackle, their franchise left tackle. You got to get this done as soon as you can. There's no reason not to, and hopefully Adam Peters and his front office there, his staff, can get this done sooner rather than later. Then there was certainly a wink-wink type of answer when it came to Brandon Aiyuk. Now, Now, Aiyuk is currently a player employed by a different NFL team, so Peters is technically not allowed to discuss Aiyuk and his potential interest in signing him, because that would be tampering. But he gave a very coy answer as to Brandon Aiyuk today in his press conference. This is what it sounded like.
Brandon Aiyuk is a player on another team under contract, so I can't comment on that. Second chances, yeah. I think everybody on earth deserves a second chance. And so with Kinlaw, I mean, that was an interesting one. Kinlaw earned his second chance, and really, he earned every single bit of it. And so I wouldn't kind of call his a second chance, so to speak. I think because I had the familiarity with him and understanding the type of person and player and competitor he is, that helped factor into that decision. But I think he earned every single bit of that by the way he came back from his injuries and everything to be a really, really good player. So in terms of Brandon, love the person, but can't really comment on the player.
I mean, come on. Did you guys see his smile on that face when they mentioned Brandon Aiyuk? Like, he knows that everyone knows it's the worst kept secret in the National Football League that Brandon Aiyuk is probably going to end up a Washington Commander. He answered that question the best way that he could with the current league rules. He doesn't want to get caught tampering or anything like that. And then another thing that, definitely connects Aiyuk to the Commanders is that Peters said himself in this press conference that, quote unquote, everything they do is with Jaden Daniels in mind. That's what this is what that sounded like.
I think, with Jaden, all of our decisions are really in consideration of him. And this one, especially with keeping David Blough and their history for the last 2 years of working together. So that helped a lot, and that gives us a lot of confidence. They have an incredible working relationship, and David's an incredible coach. So that will help speed up the process for sure, where you don't have the getting to know kind of trust building factor. That trust is already built, so that'll really help us moving forward. But I think that's everything we're going to be doing is going to be with Jaden in mind.
Well, if everything that we do is centered around Jaden Daniels, you would think that his opinion matters a little bit in terms of the wide receiver that they bring in. And Jaden has already made his desires known. He was at the Super Bowl in Santa Clara this year, and he was being as direct as he could be without just straight up saying it, that he wants Brandon Aiyuk on the Washington Commanders this year. This is what Daniels said on an interview on Media Row this year. There's a couple of individuals that are out there, maybe somebody from Arizona State in my past. There's people that are out there, but I don't want to give too much. But when that time comes, hopefully we can sign those type of players. Obviously, he's talking about his former Arizona State teammate, Brandon Aiyuk. Also, John Lynch, the San Francisco 49ers GM, took the podium today at Indianapolis, and he says that the Commanders are going to have to wait a little bit on Brandon Aiyuk, saying that Aiyuk is not going to be released until at least the start of the new league year. This is what Lynch sounded like breaking that down.
Yeah, I think nothing will happen until the new league year starts, and then when it happens, kind of semantics, but that's when something, could happen there.
Another takeaway I had from Adam Peters and Dan Quinn today in their press conferences in Indy was that they're considering another year of Zach Ertz here in Washington, despite that ACL tear that he suffered at the end. Or towards the end of that 2025 season from hell. But Tom Pelissero posted this earlier this week. Definitely an agent sort of deal where it's like, get this news out there. But Pelissero says 3-time Pro Bowl tight end Zach Ertz plans to play 14th NFL season and is expected to be cleared right around week 1 per sources. Ertz is 2 months into rehab from a torn ACL. He ranks 5th in catches and 8th in yards among tight ends in NFL history, including 504 in 13 games in 2025. So that's 50 catches, 504 yards, and 4 touchdowns last year. And then when Adam Peters talked to the media scrum after his press conference today in Indy, Nikki Jabvala says Adam Peters said the Commanders are, quote-unquote, keeping the door open for tight end Zach Ertz and have had, quote-unquote, a lot of talks with him and his agent about his progress in recovery. Now, personally, guys, I want to move on at the tight end position this offseason. It's a pretty darn good tight end free agency class that's coming out, and I think that the Commanders should probably get younger at this position, and Zach Ertz, it's no secret, is getting older. He was already a very limited athlete, and that was even before the ACL injury, and this is the type of injury that usually decreases athleticism and the ability to change directions and all that different stuff and stop on a dime, all the stuff that Zach Ertz really depends on as a player. This is not an easy injury to go through and to come back from, especially at his age, especially when he was already declining as an athlete, and I just don't know if I can trust him anymore. Now, maybe if he wants to come back to the Commanders on a super team-friendly deal, like a vet minimum or close to vet minimum deal, and then maybe you draft a tight end to learn from him and eventually replace him, maybe that's a plan that could work. But I think if you're bringing back Zach Ertz and you're not getting him any competition to be that pass-catching tight end, that safety blanket for Jaden Daniels, I understand that Ertz and Jaden have a great connection, but eventually you're going to have to move on. You're going to have to find the future at this position, and this is a pretty darn good free agency class, guys. Like, there's some of the older guys that are out there, but there's also younger guys like Isaiah Likely that you could go out and grab. So, there's definitely a lot of opportunities to replace Zach Ertz this offseason. That's probably my preferred option. I think Ertz is an awesome teammate. I think he'd be a great mentor to maybe a rookie tight end if that's the plan they end up going with, but not sure if that's the plan that I want to go with at this point in time. Now, another guy that's going to be back, confirmed by Adam Peters today, is Daron Payne, but he also confirmed that there's no active extension talks for Daron Payne as he heads into the final year of his current contract. Once again, Nicky Jhabvala confirms today Adam Peters said he's excited to have Daron Payne next season, indicating the defensive tackle will stay. He has a year left on his deal. Peters said the only player they've really had talks with about a new deal is Laramie Tunsil. That's exactly the way it should be. I believe this is the correct approach when it comes to Daron Payne, guys, because we've seen Daron, last season he was pretty good for the Washington Commanders, but ever since he got that new deal, he's been very up and down, even week to week in terms of the type of player that he is. And I think right now he's just a solid, starting, kind of versatile defensive lineman. He can, he does have movement ability. He does have size and strength to play the nose tackle if you need him to do that, and I think that will be his role in this defense next year. He's a valuable player for this team and a team that's likely going to be looking to compete again next year and try and turn the ship around and turn it around quickly. I think Payne can help this defense play well next year, but for somebody that's so inconsistent, I think it would be a mistake to spend a lot of money and give him another major contract, especially because he's approaching 30 years old. But then we get to Chris Paul, another guy that plays in the trenches here for the Washington Commanders, or at least he did last year. He's now slated to be a free agent, but Dan Quinn sounded like he's very open. In fact, it looks like he might even be, encouraging Adam Peters to re-sign this guy to be their starting left guard next season. This is what Coach Q said about last year's starting left guard.
Yeah, super proud of Chris. I thought the development, that he made and playing alongside of Laramie, I thought a couple of things that jump out to me, John. I thought like the combination blocks with the two of them, these are strong people that could move people off the line of scrimmage. And then I thought because of Chris's athleticism, the things that showed up the most to me is him in pass protection.
Now, that certainly sounds like a ringing endorsement to me from the head coach of the Washington Commanders when it came to Chris Paul. And, Paul is probably somebody that can be brought back for a pretty decent contract. I don't expect him to get paid a crap ton of money or anything like that. And like Quinn points out, he does have a lot of size to do those combo blocks with Laramie Tunsil. But he's also, a really quick guy for his size and is a pretty good pass protector as well that can anchor against some of these power rushers on the interior. So, I've kind of said, maybe try to find somebody that's more of a run blocker. I think, Paul's one of those guys that really needs those double teams in order to have success at the line of scrimmage. He's not really somebody that's going to move the line of scrimmage by himself, even though he's a mammoth human being. But he's a very good pass protector, and he's a pretty good athlete, so it wouldn't shock me at all if they end up bringing him back. And if they do bring him back on a decent deal, as long as they don't overpay for him, I think I can get on board with that. But I guess we'll just have to see. Then Dan Quinn also pointed to Ben Sinnott and what his role could be in the Washington Commanders offense next year, and it's not as Zach Ertz's replacement as the pass-catching tight end. This is what DQ had to say.
Yeah, well, I'd say featuring Ben in the ways, that he can do his things. It's in the backfield. It's, through to compare him to Zach, they're way different skill sets, So like I know they're both playing tight end, but they're featured differently in that way. And so what I do know is him on the move, and whether it's the run game, pass game, running away from people, maybe not finding the zone and stopping, those are differences. And I'm looking forward to seeing that this year.
I really found that answer really telling from Dan Quinn, and I mostly agree with it. Ben Sinnott is somebody that's really good after the catch. It seems like when you put the ball in his hands, good things tend to happen. But what he says there about using him in the backfield as a potential running back, fullback type of guy, that's an exciting idea, because I think he would be a pretty darn good fullback. Just imagine him lead blocking for Bill Krosky-Merritt. This guy can lay the wood on somebody, in the run blocking game as a fullback. Not to mention, he's got some pretty decent receiving chops that could be utilized as a fullback. And, even if you want to use him as a power running back in certain situations, that's something that you could do with Ben Sinnott. So, I don't think that he's going to have the skill set of somebody that's going to replace Zach Ertz as the quote-unquote pass-catching tight end in this offense. I think Dan Quinn has kind of accepted that about Ben Sinnott, but could he be a very nice role player inside this offense for the Washington Commanders? I'm kind of excited to see what that role could look like in a David Blough offense here in Washington. It also confirms Washington's need for that true quote-unquote pass-catching tight end, whether that's bringing back Zach Ertz or whether that's bringing in somebody else in free agency, whether that's drafting somebody in the NFL draft this year. You got to find that long-term solution at that pass-catching tight end spot to be that safety blanket for Jaden Daniels. Guess we'll see what that answer is in the weeks to come. But then also it sounds like Bobby Wagner is going to be out the door, as he should be. Now, Bobby Wagner, great guy, just won NFL Man of the Year, and that's fantastic for him. But the sun is set on Bobby Wagner's athletic prowess, and it is time for this team to get younger and faster. When Adam Peters said we need this defense to get younger and faster, the first thing that came to my mind was Bobby Wagner. We got to replace this guy, and it certainly seems with Dan Quinn's comments today on Bobby Wagner that is certainly where we are heading at this point. This is what Dan had to say. We love Wags. We haven't gotten into the specifics of what's ahead and where we're at with that yet, so that'll be in the days and weeks ahead. So the fact that he's avoiding the question and he's not saying we want Bobby Wagner back means that he's likely out. All right, this is just coach speak for, we don't want to publicly say we don't want Bobby Wagner back, but, we're not going to bring him back either, right? That's pretty much what coaches and GMs do this time of year. They speak in code, and this is definitely code speak for Bobby Wagner. You are not going to be a Washington Commander next year. But then the final point that I'll make here on today's show is that David Blough, the new offensive coordinator here in Washington, got a ringing endorsement by one of the brightest offensive minds in football. His former offensive coordinator when he was quarterbacking or backup quarterbacking the Detroit Lions, Mr. Ben Johnson. This is what Ben Johnson had to say about our new offensive coordinator.
Yeah, my experience with Blough has been as a player, but you could kind of tell early on that coaching was going to be in his calling as well. He's got a unique ability to relate with those guys, and it doesn't matter what position it is. Those guys, they all rally to him. He certainly did that when he was a player. He elevates the people around him, and I think that's always the biggest compliment you can give somebody.
Man, if you're a Commanders fan, that's got to fire you the F up, because you're having one of the best, one of the brightest offensive minds in football completely praising your new offensive coordinator in David Blough. Now, obviously, DB is somebody that has not called plays at the NFL level. He's only been in coaching. This will be his third season, so he's definitely green, and he's going to have to learn on the job and all those different things. But Adam Peters also talked today about the advantages of bringing in David Blough, his relationship that's already established with Jaden Daniels, and how that already has established that trust between offensive play caller and quarterback that is so important. And then when you have somebody that's at the forefront of modern schematics the way David Blough is, you can't help but be excited about this new regime offensively here in Washington. Is it going to work out? Only time will tell. Sometimes these young guys really flame out in their first offensive play calling opportunity. But, with his connection to Ben Johnson, with his connection to Jaden Daniels, and all the different stuff that Dan Quinn and everybody else says about this guy, man, like, how can you not be excited about offensive football here in Washington heading into the David Blough era. So what say you guys? Let me know down there in the comment section. What is your excitement level for the new offense this year under David Blough? Put it on a scale of 1, meaning not excited at all, this is going to be an absolute failure, to 10, meaning I can't wait to watch this offense next year. Let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. Now, if you guys want to check out Adam Peters and Dan Quinn's full press conferences, we have those available on the channel right now for you guys to check out. I will put the links to those in the comments and description of today's show, and put the chip in the top right as well that you guys can click on if you want to go directly to those videos. But that'll be it for today's edition of the Commanders Report by Chat Sports. We put out a bunch of combine content for you guys on this channel today. It only gets better tomorrow as player interviews begin, and we begin to really figure out who are the Commanders interested in, who are they meeting with formally at the NFL Combine, who are they interested in. We finally get some answers this week from Indianapolis. So if you don't want to miss any of the content that we're going to be providing for you guys as the week goes on, make sure you guys click that subscribe button and join the over 50,000 Commanders fans already a part of Commanders Report Nation.